Wow, that went really fast. I clicked and it's like live. It's like usually it takes like 5-6 seconds. What the hell?
Really good connections tonight, apparently.
Yes, what is this? Media Crapper's working. Boo! Or something. But anyway, we're live now, so for the EUS show number 23. I think it's 23. That's what I put down.
23, 24, somewhere in that neighborhood.
We're in the low 20s. So we're here and we're coming out of our coma from Thanksgiving. Or
yes.
Or unlike me having the coma from just earlier today because I was at my mom's eating and then ended up almost going into an orgasmic coma after eating. Not from Thanksgiving dinner tonight. It was because we had food up there so then we could get rid of the food. So it's like, the food's about to spoil. Let's eat it all. So I ate up there. So if I end up half going like this, you'll know why. So, but
it'll be 8 hours of us snoring.
Well, it'll only go 4 hours and then it'll just cut off. Because this happened to Henry and I back when I was doing Weather Network stuff. We did severe weather coverage like we used to. And we were doing it and not realizing that YouTube had cut us off after 4 hours. And we had done a whole hour not realizing, almost an hour. We were in our 5th hour and not realizing that we had been cut off an hour prior. We were so pissed off. That was so stupid. Which pretty much led to us pretty much scrapping live coverage eventually when we finally eventually scrapped it because it was just not usable, and for the fact we weren't having a whole lot of severe weather, long-lasting severe weather. So yeah, that's why you don't see like Weather Brains doing like these huge long hour marathon type shows, mainly because Span works and all the other people are like, I have stuff to do. So we'd have to redo it every 4 hours or roughly before that, so then you're not cut off.
Let us pause for station identification.
Yeah, we're pausing for the next part. And eventually after if we had to do a 24-hour marathon, we'd run out of things to talk about after about an hour and a half. Or something to that effect. I don't know, because we'd have to have guests on, and trying to get guests on in the middle of the night would be horrific.
Yes.
Unless they're completely drunk, at that point they'd probably get themselves fired from their day job, which would not be fun because then we'd get sued. So, but I'm sure everybody had a good Thanksgiving. It was at least comfortable outside, not to eat outside, but comfortable to be able to drive anywhere, to get to wherever you had to go. No bad storms.
I spent Thanksgiving at my girlfriend's dad's house up by Mason City.
Yeah, no. At least you so then you stuffed yourself and then you were like sleeping for 5 hours afterwards.
Actually, surprisingly enough, I did not get my obligatory case of food coma on Thanksgiving.
Nope,
I thought I would.
Right.
I
go back up there.
Ate enough.
You have to go back. Yep, you have to go back and do it again. You didn't do it right.
Yeah, apparently.
I didn't get one either because usually I don't. Well, ever since I lost my gallbladder a couple of years ago, I have to be very careful of overeating because then I end up having complete stomach pains and then I'm in a bathroom for 45 minutes. So you don't want it. So I have to be very careful. So when I usually feel like I have to stop, I stop and then I usually rest. But since my niece was at my mom's house, because my mom was watching my niece because, of course, her mother, which would be my sister, my niece's mother, my sister, works in retail. Well, if everybody knows, retail on Thanksgiving means you have to go to work.
Yep.
So, and she, of course, when my sister works, she's staying at my mom's house. So and since her husband also is in retail, that means my niece stays at my mom's. So then she's there. She was there for the couple days around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So I went up there and we had Thanksgiving dinner there. And then, of course, with a 6-year-old, because she's 6, she wants to play. Well, my mother and I are like, oh, we're tired because you don't want to keep getting up, like you eat a bunch of Thanksgiving dinner and then you want to be like, let's go on a ride. Let's just do wheelies and then let's run around. You don't want to do that.
I did that today, though. I didn't do wheelies, but I rode my bike today.
And well, okay, next week next week Matthew won't be on because he'll be sick. Because although I bundled
up nicely.
I will say this: the sun came out today. This bright thing, we haven't seen it in 4 days.
Yeah, that bright yellow orb in the sky. Yeah,
oh
I almost forgot what that was.
Because it just stayed cloudy forever. And the sad thing is, the sun's going to go away again because now we're going back into another big 2-3 day period of rain.
Yep.
With embedded thunder, which will be really fun.
Woohoo! I'm already getting my thunder withdrawals, so this will be good.
Well, unfortunately, the only severe weather that I see is going to be way along the Gulf Coast.
Yeah.
And I told my mother, if Matt says he wants to go chasing in Louisiana, I'll tell him to go leave.
No.
We're not driving to Louisiana.
Not happening.
Yeah, we're not driving.
Not happening.
Maybe if we ever decide to do a chase in, say, Alabama, do it once, but I'd never after that. Because
the only thing that would get me to go into that deep of trees, and me, I mean us,
yeah,
is a high risk.
A high risk means April 27th type activity, and I'd be like, no. Yeah, I'd be kind of a little bit leery, but not overly so. Mainly because
if it was an April 27th level event, I would go. But
we have to stay.
The scope of the entire operation of us going down there would be completely different because the things I would be packing are not things to film tornadoes. I would not pack my GoPro. I would not pack my extra batteries and, 2 cell phone chargers and all that stuff. I would pack canned food, extra clothing, flashlight, batteries, things. I would rebuild my first aid kit from the military,
which you probably
just in case.
Anyway.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Well, my first aid kit for the military included stuff to start IVs.
And you do
have. In the military, I was trained to do that.
And you still would be considered that you can still do it.
For another 3 months, I will be.
But then you need to be retrained.
Yes, in which case I would actually have to go back to phlebotomy school, which is a couple of years and several $1,000s, which I do not have that money to invest. So I will not be starting any.
Because you're still paying off on your car.
Yes, and my student loans and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll just see. But because I thought I would want to do that once, given the fact, for example, Mississippi, I'm pretty decent. Northern Mississippi, I'm pretty decent with. Alabama, I pretty much know, watching Span 5,000 gazillion times. Yeah. I could probably be just as and here's so-and-so's house. I probably know where it is.
Yep.
I'm being somewhat cynical about that, but I would know my way around the northern, maybe 2/3 of Alabama.
Yep.
Even up into the Tennessee River Valley. But
yep.
I would only want to do it once, and then I may never want to do it again because a lot of people, I've seen a lot of storm chasers have gone down there that have gotten good shots, but it's like a needle in a haystack where the best place is, depending on where the tornado is, if there is one, and it's most of them are rain wraps. You're not going to see them. It just so happened to be on April 27th in 2011. Quite a few of them were not rain wrapped. In fact, almost at least over half of them weren't, or more than half of them weren't, which is very atypical for the South. So, but, and we got kind of taken off on a tangent with that, but
we started talking about Thanksgiving. That leads me to my complaint.
Here we go.
It leads me to my complaint. We did a little, my girlfriend and I did a little post-Thanksgiving shopping up in Mason City / Clear Lake, that area. And I have a bone to pick with a few people. It was while I was standing in line, or while we were standing in line at Best Buy, I was scrolling through my phone. Granted, we didn't spend much time in line at Best Buy. Everything kicked off at Best Buy, I think, at 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And we showed up there like 6 minutes prior to the place opening. So we were pretty far back in line. So I'm scrolling through my phone, looking at stuff. And I had already gotten stuff in my newsfeed on Twitter about people being trampled to death during Black Friday opening sales.
Yeah.
I think 3 people total in the United States got trampled or died as a result of attending Black Friday, shall we call them, festivities.
Even on Thanksgiving evening.
Yeah. And that leads me to my rant or my complaint. We spend this day, which is a uniquely American holiday, giving thanks and being thankful for what we are, and then we go out and then we show this kind of ill will to our fellow man. That is absolute BS. When you are so excited and so crazy about stuff that you are willing to potentially kill somebody for it, you have issues. You have serious issues. You need to get yourself looked at, because that is not the right way to live. A lot of stuff where I was, there was a couple people pushing and shoving and stuff like that. Just being generally rude. I think that was just the food coma wearing off. That's what I'll chalk that up as, just because I want to be nice. But for some reason, it just really unsettled me that there were 3 people that are no longer here with us because they wanted to be the first person to buy that hot new gadget. Absolute crap. And this is coming from somebody who's a pretty big gadget freak. I mean, I'm sitting here on my brand new iPhone 7 Plus, wearing my Bose headphones doing this show. I like my technology, I like my stuff, but I'm absolutely not willing to sacrifice my fellow human beings to get my hands on that. If it comes to that, they can have it. I will go on to the next thing. This is not something that needs to be even argued upon in my mind. If you need it that bad, then figure it out anyway. Instead of fighting somebody or trampling somebody to death over it, just figure it out. Figure out how to get it anyway. If you need it that badly, don't sit around and bash somebody, or not sit around and literally walk all over someone to the point where they are no longer here just so you can get it. It's extremely selfish, and it's pretty low. But that's all I have to say about that. That's all my negative Nancy stuff.
Oh, I can get it. I can get on this. And now that I can connect it to weather somehow by more or less saying, and I'll connect it in a little bit. But in this day and age, this is what bothers me more. Where I can keep the rant going by saying, and if you're buying this for Christmas, given that this is Christmas shopping season, if it's all about me, then that makes it worse. But this is what I'm also saying. If you're buying it for somebody for Christmas, last I checked, Christmas is not the next day. You can go online and buy it. Because from what I saw when I was looking at a lot of the ads when I was up at my mom's, when they had all the ads about, ooh, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, ooh, buy. Most of the places you could buy those Black Friday deals online.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted it that bad, but if you wanted it like not right away, you could have gone online and saved yourself the hassle. Not saying that those 3 people could have saved themselves the hassle, but the people that were like, gimme, get out of my way. Those people.
The people that contributed to those 3 people dying could have easily done that.
Yeah, if the people that are like pushing, shoving, don't give a flying hoot about who they injure or whatever, if they're that desperate to get it like right now, I mean, they're like you said, they're completely idiotic and they need to be like put in a hospital or something.
They need to be committed. If they are that obsessed and that absorbed by
they're obsessive compulsive.
Things, not obsessive compulsive, but just obsessed to the point of bringing someone harm to get the chance to buy a thing.
No, he said chance.
There's a problem. There's a massive problem with that in my mind. But yeah. I'm going to circumvent my negative Nancy by, I'm just going to get all my stuff thrown away here, done at the onset. To offset my negative Nancy-ness, I'm going to go on, for lack of a better term, a rant about something else. That is very good, I think. And this is a little bit weather related because this speaks to the human element of weather and meteorology and meteorologists and weather forecasters and the people involved with this. Sorry, I had to take a drink of water. Just recently, there's an album by a very well-known rock band by the name of Metallica that was just released called Hardwired to Self-Destruct. And as many of you know or may know or are about to know, I am a very big fan of heavy music. I don't want to call it heavy metal because that's genrefying it too much, and there's already too much of that in my mind. It's heavy music because it is music. I obviously own the album. I bought the CD at Target on Black Friday, and I also downloaded the album on my phone off of iTunes. I love the album. I think it is probably, and I'm going out there a little bit, it is probably one of, if not their best albums ever. Yes, it does hold up, I think, to even a Master of Puppets or Ride the Lightning or Kill 'Em All. I think in some aspects, it's a lot better than even those 3. But that's a whole other discussion for a whole other show. The reason why I wanted to bring that up on this program is because it has to do with the energy with which you put forth in your chosen craft or profession. Metallica are a group of individuals who are very creative and artistic and love music. And they put forth a gargantuan effort to put together this album. And I've done a little bit of homework on this album. They did this album, excuse me, as great as it is, while being the first music act, period, not rock, not pop, not country, the first musical act, period, to perform on all 7 continents in 1 year. Also, while going on their own full-fledged worldwide tour, where they supported their last album for 3.5 to 4 years. They recorded a live album with Lou Reed. They self-funded, they self-produced, and self-released their own 3D movie called Through the Never, which is a gargantuan task in anybody's book. I don't care who you are. And they did a whole bunch of other stuff. They did the Metallica by Request tour, where literally every date they played, 15 of the 16 songs that the band played, the fans requested 15 of them. Only the 16th and last song was reserved for the band itself. They did a lot from the time that they finished the album cycle for their last record, Death Magnetic, and this album coming out. They did a lot. For some musical acts, that's an entire career in and of itself. What this, I believe, applies to us here in the weather community, weather enthusiast community, is that, sum it up in one sentence, you always get out what you put into something. They worked literally 1 to 2 days at a time on this album. As I came to learn this, doing my research and my homework on how they made the record. They would have 1 or 2 days off. They would take one of those days. They go in the studio and they put down some ideas. They put down some ideas on tape and then save those for later. And then they gradually worked and progressed that album, the making of that album, forward in that way. Literally 1 or 2 days at a time. Very piecemeal. Which means they saw what they were already doing, and they saw what they wanted to do, and they just went ahead and made it work. They made it happen. They took the time out. They made the time to make this album, and it came out great. And I think a lot of people in the weather community can take something out of their book, because if we all did that just a little bit more, made that little bit more time, I think that this community would be a lot better place, especially with what we have coming up with the administration, new equipment going up in space with GOES-R. With all that added capability comes a lot more responsibility, because all of a sudden we're going to be smarter. So we need to be smarter with ourselves too. The energy with which that they put forth into that record really spoke to me, and it shows with that album. It really shows. Any one of those songs on that record, you know what I'm talking about. They put their all into this record. And if we, as weather professionals or enthusiasts or whatever level in this weather game you're at, if you put your all into something like love or whatever, you're going to get that back. And that's something that I think everybody can use. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, you don't want to end up doing something haphazard either. And they're not known for doing anything haphazard or rushing.
Yeah.
Just because
it.
Yeah, just because fans are like, we want a new album, we want this, nah, 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 nah. So
that's made painfully obvious with this record. It was 2,700 plus days from when Death Magnetic, their last record, came out to when this record came out. Yeah. Granted, they had a lot of other stuff to do.
Yeah.
But they took their time with it because obviously they had a lot of stuff to do, but they also wanted to take their time with it so they could make it what they wanted it. They had an idea, and they had a vision or a concept that they wanted in their heads, and they didn't stop until that was realized. And they took the time to do that. Yeah, that probably meant more work, more time in the studio, more time, playing the guitar, playing the drums, or behind the bass, or whatever, or in the control room, turning knobs and talking to people and making phone calls and all that stuff. All the stuff that goes into making a record and then selling it. It took more time, but the more time they took, the better it got. And I think that's what you're seeing here, is when the right people are assembled and they do the right things at the right time, something pretty damn important happens. So that's all I got to say.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I want to then get into my screaming thing about the tropical thing that we had, because I might. But I was going to go off on the weather thing about the buying stuff, and I'll go on to this, and then I'll go on to my thing about auto. That when people are always like complain about you're interrupting Dancing with the Stars, so or whatever, when you're doing severe weather coverage, it's almost a similarity to the thing that occurred with people going and buying stuff. There's other ways besides standing in a line and getting stuff. Similarly to there's other ways to watch stuff if there's bad weather. You can watch things online, even if it's delayed. Similarly to speaking to buying stuff online, you don't get it right away, but at least you get it. So that's where I was getting it, because I bought stuff on the internet. I didn't need it right away. It would have maybe been slightly cheaper because I wouldn't have had to pay for shipping, but I didn't need it right away. I'm not obsessed about getting it and pushing and shoving and grabbing people and throwing them to the ground just to get it. I mean, I have the patience to wait, and that's the thing. There's not enough patience in this country with anybody, whether it's buying something or you're irritated because somebody's on your TV telling you there's a tornado coming and you want to watch something else. There's too many people that are just like, and they need to be, and I feel bad that 3 people died, but the bad thing is, and maybe even the sad thing is, they're not going to be the last ones. There's going to be more. And it's not the first ones, because this has happened, about every year for the past 3 or 4 now, where there's been at least, because there was people that were killed last year.
I would say it's been probably the last 6 or 7 years.
It's never been since we went to when it used to be midnight. They would be open midnight Friday. That's when it really started.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Ever since. And now I have to. So now I'm going to complain. Excuse me. About Hurricane Otto, which used to be a hurricane. It's now dissipated. It dissipated today. Otto formed in the Southwest Caribbean about a week ago, something like that. It had been in the Southwest Caribbean for like a week prior to that, just moseying around going, something like that. Came a depression, became a tropical storm, became a hurricane, category 1. Then it weakened to a tropical storm. Then it strengthened to a category 2 hurricane and made landfall in southern Nicaragua. Now, it broke records for the most southernmost hurricane in the Caribbean. And I believe the latest hurricane to ever be in the Caribbean, period. Because you never hear that often talking about hurricanes hitting places like Costa Rica, and there being tropical storm warnings in Panama, and I believe it was the warning went all the way to near the canal zone. That kind of tells you this is like way far away. Yep. Now, the storm crossed into the Pacific. Now, this is where I'm going to get pissy. Now, I know I had heard that a couple years ago that they had changed things, but it wasn't really well brought out, which is what I think is pissing me more off about the other thing. That said, that any storm that does make it across, even if it's from the Pacific to the Atlantic or Atlantic to the Pacific, would keep its name. This was something new. I believe it came from WMO. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But they didn't tell anybody, very few people outside the weather community. Because this is what I saw. There were several news organizations that said that Otto would be renamed Virgil, which would have been the next Pacific name, if it crossed in the Pacific. I saw news organizations saying that. And that confused me into thinking, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Is it going to be Virgil? Which made me tweet that it was going to be. Then I saw that there was other things that said it wasn't going to be, which I think was what I had thought because I had heard things talking about it. So that drove me nuts that maybe they should have told people instead of telling themselves, because I don't think anybody would have given a crap. Joe Blow is not going to care about a tropical system becoming one name and then it's another name or it's the same name. They're not going to care. But given that this is the first storm to go from the Atlantic to the Pacific since 1996, which was Cesar Douglas, which is what it's called. Go on Wikipedia. It's called Cesar Douglas, which I would have loved this because this name would have been Otto Virgil, which would have been funny. Who would want to see a storm with two names? Because it sounds cool. Because this is what makes me kind of a little bit irritated. If this was from WMO, then what's stopping in the Western Pacific from Japan having one name and the Philippines having another? It's the same storm. It has two names. If WMO told the Hurricane Center they had to keep one name, then why? Then who's to tell the Philippines and Japan which one's the better name? I don't know. Because that kind of irritates me a little bit. But I'm not as irritated as I was, but I just feel as though they didn't do a good job of presenting it to say it's going to keep its name now, because people would look back and say, these names there were storms that had two names. Why is that? Why did this one not have two names? I'm just saying it for the benefit of people are going to think that. So, and that's like, it's like some people, they just don't tell people and they think everybody knows, and it doesn't. So, that just makes me mad. And I had to drink for that.
What are you drinking?
I am having cherry Pepsi right now.
Ooh.
That you can't buy at Walmart.
Correct.
Because, and I won't go into a rant about that, but I will go on to something I did get in my mail.
Uh-oh.
No, this is not not a thing and I'll put my camera on, although it's not going to be very well lit, because I ended up getting my NWA thing, because this is the Weather Association Foundation, which was announced at NWA this year. And I also got my thing from my dues, and I got my ballot for NWA. So, but here, this was the funny thing. I never told NWA I moved, but it was sent to my address. It was not forwarded. It came to my address. And I'm like, okay. I didn't tell them I moved. So.
NWA has Big Brother.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. Excuse me. And I'll just mention who were the ballot, because for NWA members, which Matt is not one of, I don't think he is.
Not yet.
Oh, for example, I'll just tell people this, because my renewal date's not till February. So that the annual membership is $65, and if you were retired or from your thing, or a full-time student, or you were in active military, which of course, Matt, you're a former military, it would have been $22. So you still have to pay individual of $65. You get the corporate membership of $250, or you can have lifetime membership, which means you would never have to pay another fee again, and that's $1,625. But I'll mention, because I'll just do the ballot, because I'm not going to show it. I'm just going to mention who's being elected for. That the president-elect, it's either Alan Seals or Paul Schlatter. This would be the president-elect, which means they would be the president in 2018. The president-elect would be the president that's upcoming. Yes. For example, Dave Freeman is the president this year, and his term's about to end. Then he's going to move into being past president, which is another thing. It's a mess. There's no vice president because, of course, the vice president's a 2-year term, and, of course, we know who that is. That would be Bill Murray.
Yay.
And the secretary is a 2-year term, and I don't know who won that. I don't remember. The treasurer is either going to be Lance Rothfuss or Keith Snellman. Both have been on Weather Brains. I do know that. There's no student. There's no student counselor thing that we're voting. Well, I'm voting on because you're not in it. But the counselors, these are the people that are like, they get to be on the council and they get to tell people where they want to do the NWA meetings and this, that, and the other thing and whatnot. We have 8 people, and we can only vote for 4 of them. One of the people that we're voting on is a former Polygon guest. And that would be James Paul Dice from WBRC in Birmingham.
Woohoo!
And most of the other people I've heard of and know who they are to a certain extent or whatnot. But yeah, I will probably do my ballot online. I have the ballot here, so I don't know. So it's like elections. I'm like, elections? Ah! So
it's a good thing that NWA doesn't have like we have for governmental elections. Wouldn't that be something?
Well, I actually thought about this. This was before you came. I thought the funniest thing would have been is to have the people like the 2 people coming on and debating. I'm like, if they can have debates between presidential candidates, let's do it for NWA. I'm sure the NWA would hate it, because then it would become too political, and they don't want to be political. But then I'd think, then why do you have all these things that sounds like we're voting on something? That makes it sound political. If you don't want it to be political, then don't make it political.
What I think they're doing, and you probably what it looks like from the outside, is they're trying to keep it more merit-based instead of. So if say there's no debates, there's no, like we have for, presidential and Congress elections and stuff like that. They want to keep it more focused on the merits of the people that are up for, or that are candidates for election, and not, you know, what they say, or what, you know, what certain things they say, or what politicking they do. Because politicking is dangerous in my mind.
Yeah, because the thing that made me, because this was happened at NWA in Oklahoma City when I was there with Henry, is there actually was a little bit of politicking going on, and it had nothing to do with NWA.
Mm-hmm.
And that it had to do with AMS, which made me a little bit kind of, because I'm not a member of AMS because I think AMS is stupid. And AMS is filled with, the membership of AMS is like outrageous. So, and their annual meetings are expensive, and they're in January, which is the worst time to be trying to fly anywhere. So, but I did make a suggestion to NWA about their 2018 NWA meeting, which they haven't decided on yet, as far as I know. I could send an email to Janice Bunting. But I suggested that they have the 2018 NWA annual meeting in Cedar Rapids, which would be the 10-year anniversary of the flood. But this is what I got from Janice Bunting. This is what I got. She took it into consideration, but she also told me where it was likely going to be. It was likely going to be in the Southeast again, which I thought was a little interesting for the fact that if it's going to be in the Southeast again, it will have gone so many years with it having not been in the Midwest, because it was in the East this year in Norfolk, Virginia, after being in Oklahoma City last year or the year before, which means it should be back in the Midwest in 2018 after being in the West. But they're going to put it back in the Southeast, which more than likely, it's probably going to end up, if I was to take a guess, probably Atlanta or Charlotte. They've been talking about either. I've heard those mentioned a lot in the past. But Charlotte would be too close to Charleston, which was a couple of years ago. And, of course, there was an NWA meeting not that long ago in Madison, Wisconsin, which is one I could have gone to. That was in 2012.
Yes.
But there's been several in St. Louis, which is another one that I mentioned to her, if it can't be in Cedar Rapids because of the hotel situation, to have it in St. Louis again. Because in 2018, it would not only be the 10-year anniversary of the flood here, it would be the 25-year anniversary of the flood of '93.
And also the 10-year anniversary of the Parkersburg tornado.
Well, yeah, but a bunch of anniversaries in that year. Right. So it would be of some significance. So, but she took that into consideration, but she doesn't get a vote anyway. And most of the people, and I'd make a snide remark that most of the NWA people are more or less of the me, I want it at my place or whatnot. Hopefully not. JP, if he gets elected as a counselor, is not that type of person, because I've had him on, and he's very nice. He's battled through cancer because he had cancer, and he's
correct.
So, but the funny thing about it is, and this is kind of funny, that JP is at WBRC, which is where Span was. Span used to be at Channel 6 in Birmingham.
Right.
And at Channel 6, when James was there, the last three people that were there, this was after Kevin Sully had gone to Richmond, Virginia, was Span, who's been on Polygon before, Dan Satterfield, who's been on Polygon before, and that other guy that I can't remember his name now, but he's also been Shane Butler, who's also been on Polygon. I had this was when Span was still, the last 2 years Span was at Channel 6, the 3 weather people they had have all been on Polygon before, which I found funny. And JP, who's at BR at Channel 6 now, I have now had 4 people from the same, who had worked at the same TV station. And then, of course, I can even count this. JP and Dan Satterfield used to work together at WHNT, which is where Jason Simpson now works, and I've had him on, so that's 3 from Huntsville. I did good. Maybe I should count the people that have worked at the Weather Channel. I have a lot of them.
Right.
Dan Pope, Lisa Spencer, Eric Fisher. That's 3 so far. I could count more. I could find more, but...
So what you're saying is we're becoming part of the pipeline.
Yeah, but then these people will be like people. So
what's that?
If we were to see them in person, I'd see them, they'd be like, "Who are you?" That's what they would do. We haven't done a Polygon in so long because I've given up on looking for guests because I think I've pissed everybody off, which may or may not irritate me, but oh well, their loss. And
it's what it is.
It's mainly not their doing, it's mainly corporate doing.
Right.
That it's all about them. Whether or not
we're not the only weather show to see that kind of, I guess, lack of a better term, that blowback. Even shows like, Tornado Talk and Weather Brains, they're having to I guess, further and widen their searches for people to have on as guests because of this, I don't know what you'd call it, this crackdown of TV weather personalities being on these shows.
Yeah, and it's not like they're like giving up the secrets. I mean, when I tried to, and I'll say this for the fact, I'm not going to mention who, for fear that they were told no. That a certain person was pretty much told they couldn't be on. They wanted to be on, but they couldn't be on because corporate told them no. Which more or less, and I've had people on from the same group, the grouping of stations before. So it must have been just recently. So that's why it really hurts shows like the Polygon we used to do. Weather Brains, I don't think has had more than a handful of TV weather people in a year and a half. And that's more or less why I stopped watching it, because it started getting stale. And it didn't help matters when they would have the same guests on twice in like 6 weeks. It really started to make it look like they were really scraping the bottom of the barrel. I mean, there's a lot of decent shows, but I refuse to watch it because in my mind, it's jump shark. In my mind, the show, when I first started listening to Weather Brains in 2008, and I went back and listened to the older shows even, the show is not the same show. Some of it has gotten better, but a lot of it has gotten worse. I think back then, it was a smaller group. They've exploded it, and the problem with a lot of TV shows even, that when you start to get the cast too big, it starts to cause too much problem, and then the show blows up, and then everything collapses. Mm-hmm. Luckily, Weather Brains is not paying for all these people, so they have that going, but it's just not the same anymore because you're wondering if the people are even going to be there, or if they're not, or if they're too busy, and then you don't know if you're going to have a full group. They have too many guests that feels like you're forcing people on you. When back in the old days, they would have like 5 or 6 shows in a row where they didn't have a guest, and those were some of the best shows where they got to just gab about the weather, and they said, oh, and this happened, and blah, 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 and they would say, and this happened in Oregon, and they talked about it for 40 minutes. Now they're like, oh, and there's a tornado. Now let's talk to our next guest who's going to tell us about blah, 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 and we don't care about the weather. It's almost like they're not caring about what's going on, that they're not listening to what's going on current. they're talking about something that happened a long time ago or something that's going to happen, or you know what I mean? They're not listening in the present. They're not focused. They're too much tunnel vision. And that just pissed me off. And I'm like, no, I'm not, because we had this. I'm going on to a rant. Can't you tell that that we had severe weather, and I'm like, woo, they're going to talk about us. There was no mention of it. Why? Because they skipped over the local weather and went right to stupid emails that are like, oh, I'm blah blah blah. Woo. It's like, okay, I'm sorry. And that was one of the last shows I ever watched. Well, I watched them because I watched them on YouTube. But that's one of the last shows because they weren't paying attention to local weather. And it's almost like Span, it almost make me feel like Span was sort of, and don't take this wrong, people who are listening to this, but it made it sound like Span was a hypocrite. When he talks about, well, we're not going to be bad to these people in rural areas. We're not going to do that. And then he's like, well, skip over the local weather. Well, heck, if he decided to be on TV at 10 o'clock and say, oh, the weather's sunny, back to you. If he did that, he'd be fired. I mean, Weather Brains is weather, not blah, 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 everything else. I mean, this show is more or less blah, 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 everything else. Because 90% of the time we have to rant about something and somehow it's connected to weather, but it's like, argh! So. And
there's a difference between us and them, they being Weather Brains, they are an established show. They've been on now for 566 consecutive weeks.
Yeah, they've been, consecutive weeks when they had to tape shows ahead of time and then air them. Yeah.
Correct.
They'll have past 11 years coming up. So
I don't think that they are focusing on so much the local weather anymore, because they're trying to get a somewhat bigger message out there. I think they're going away from it because they're trying to push this message of we all need to get together and talk about it. I guess what I'm trying to say is, in essence, they don't want to be the ones talking about it. They want everybody else talking about it. So problems within the weather community can get solved and things can get done and more lives can be saved, and the senselessness that happened on April 27th, 2011, for example, doesn't happen again. That's my take on it. That's kind of how I feel about it, and that's the viewpoint that I have, is that they're not so much talking about it because it's not them that they want talking about it. It's not themselves. They want everybody else talking about it. And maybe that's the right way. Maybe that's the wrong way. I don't know, but
I'll mention this because
their point is being.
You're getting into another topic I was going to mention too. Excuse me, which you kind of then brushed past on here, was Span wrote a thing on Medium.com recently. So like this week, about the failure to communicate about the drought in the South. And I think, given the fact that they're down there, they should be doing a lot of stuff about droughts now. And I mean, they have to schedule these people way in advance, and I can understand that for the fact. And I could bring up who they're going to have on in the next couple of weeks. Sometimes they have to just cancel people just so they can have other people on to talk about stuff that's going on. For example, this next on Monday, they're going to have Mike Wolfenbarger from WDT. The last I checked, that's not anything about drought. They're going to have Gary Lezak on, hint, 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 TV weather person, talking about the national water model. Now that actually would be of some significance. They like the water model. They need water. I think it means weather model, but it says water model on here. And then they have, then they have, they're expected to have Gary, that Gary guy, the one in New Jersey at Weather Service Mount Holly, the one who said he was sorry. They're going to have him on again. He's been on several times on Weather Brains, but it's something rubs me the wrong way about Weather Brains and whatnot. So, and it's nothing personal, but I've actually gotten to the point that I have not watched a Span Weather Extreme video in 6 months. That's how bad it's gotten, to the point that I don't watch severe weather coverage from Span anymore, mainly because Sinclair ruins it. It's ruined now because their internet connection must be as bad as telephones on a string now, because it's so choppy and it's irritating. And I mean, I'm sorry, I can't watch Sinclair station's severe weather coverage. They're so bad. Channel 2 here, yes, it's Sinclair, but I don't have to watch a stream for it. I can watch it on TV. And Terry does a very good job, given the fact I've seen some of there is severe weather coverage of Terry on Channel 2 that's on YouTube at Channel 2, and it's very good. The problem is if you're watching
that's what I was going to talk about. You brought up probably the only two people in the country that work at Sinclair that I think have that kind of clout, where they can do their own severe weather coverage their own way, and that's Wales and James Span. I honestly think those are the only two people in this country that have the kind of audience following that they have to do the coverage that, quite frankly, everybody deserves, regardless of where they're at. There's something else I was going to say, but I can't remember what I was going to say. And I think it's strange that you bring up those two, because Span, I don't care who Span works for, he can do severe weather coverage the way he wants to, regardless.
Yeah.
And he'll take himself down before he changes that. So on that point, I have to disagree with you on. I think I have watched some of James's severe weather coverage since they've been taken over by Sinclair. Nothing has changed from him.
Except the radar, which I don't like.
Which that happens. I mean, that's going to happen.
And I could go on to a complete crazed rant about
all a whole other show.
Companies having the same boring graphics. Hint, hint, hint. Hearst. Hint, hint, hint. Everybody else does that. But
well, that's a whole other show, and I could argue the other side of that until the sun comes up tomorrow morning. But
we have all night.
Aside from that, and the way Span or Swales focuses on the delivery or the geography or the culture or the science, they both own their own brand of meteorology to their viewership. They both do the same things. Span still mentions barbecue joints and Kmart's and Targets and gas stations and stuff when he's calling out communities
not
to take
quite
action.
as often as he used to, but yes, he still does.
Well, he hasn't had to the degree that we're used to, because, well, there hasn't been another April 27th.
Well, I think April 28th, 2014 was probably the closest, but
that's the closest, but that's a whole other thing.
You know,
there hasn't been a time where there's been 6 violent tornadoes on the ground at the same time in one DMA. And he's responsible for all of them. That hasn't happened. So yeah, to go to those measures, yes, is of course way down. But desperate measures. That's kind of where that goes, I think. The whole point is that Span still does his own brand of severe weather coverage. Swales still does his own brand of severe weather coverage. And those are the only two people, because of the way they do it, and because they've done it their way for so long. I think they're the only two people in this country with the clout to stand up to a Sinclair and say, hey, look, all this stuff that you want me to do, I'm not going to do. I'm not going to change any of the stuff that I do because what I have works. And I could prove it. And not only viewership and not only in live saves, but also in dollars and cents, which is what they, meaning the top brass at the Sinclairs of the world, they are looking at the dollars and cents because they are a for-profit entity. They are looking to make money. They are looking to turn a profit. It just so happens that those two people, Swales and Span, can do amazing coverage of severe weather, do it the right way, and people still make money. Everybody still makes money. There's those two people still make a very comfortable living. It's probably not what it used to be. But then again, I've never been a TV meteorologist, so I don't know what they make, nor do I want to know. But the point is that they are making money. The TV station is making money because they're selling local ads based on the merits of those two people. And by default, the owners are also making money because, well, they own the stations. So they see the profit too. So there's something to be said there. Maybe more of these Sinclair folks need to start taking a closer look at the Spans and the Swaleses of the world. And back in the day, the Dave Freeman, looking at those type of people and taking pages out of their books and making their coverage that much better. And maybe then we can turn this corner of having these problems. Because what also comes with that clout is the ability to do what you want, which means going on to podcasts, doing your own podcasts, starting your own blogs and websites. Because both Stan and Swales have their own blogs outside of the domain name of their respective TV stations.
Yeah.
I don't think Swales has a podcast yet, although that's an idea.
I don't think Terry has the time.
No.
Because if you have to remember that his wife got diagnosed with cancer last fall.
She has officially been done with cancer.
He's in remission now. Yeah.
6 months.
Because I remember he got diagnosed right after around the time my dad did. So.
Yep. That is.
Well, more or less what I was going
after.
That
means that if more people follow their suit, I guess you could say. I think if more TV weather people follow Stan and Swales' suit, then you'll start seeing more and more TV personalities on other podcasts and on other productions outside of their TV studios.
It more or less is not the fact of that, because I kind of said X, and then you kind of took off in another direction, which is not the direction I wanted to go. I more or less don't watch Stan's coverage mainly because it's not the quality, it's of the broadcast, it's the quality of their streaming broadcast. Their streaming sucks.
Okay.
But which is more or less why I can't watch them anymore. And I've noticed when they even put it onto YouTube, it's cutty. It almost looks like I'm watching. It's like being broadcast like a kinescope from like satellite. It's so choppy. And I'm like, this isn't even watchable. Why are they putting it on YouTube? It makes Span look bad when he's not. because I know you were going in the right direction, but I was going off in another direction by saying Sinclair is making them look bad by not having good streaming service for people to watch, because Span's growth, as you've said, is not just in the Birmingham DMA. He is well known everywhere. And there's too many people that don't have the right idea to think, oh, well, so-and-so may have relatives somewhere else, and they might want to know if a tornado is coming toward Aunt Matilda and wherever, and she's going to be, because there's always the thing about calling people. Well, if the people that you need to call, if you're the one that wants to call them, but you're watching a stream and the stream sucks, and it's not your internet's fault, it's their streaming problem's fault, then who's the person that should be yelled at? It's not your internet provider, it's their streaming service. Sinclair's streaming service has been crap for years. And then
now that's something that I don't know about.
Because this is interesting. And you would know this because you watched April 27th, 2011 when you were in the Middle East. And their streaming service back then was excellent. And I watched that streaming service at my house with crappier internet than I have now. I had no issues. You can't even watch 20 minutes of Sinclair streaming, and it goes haywire. It shuts off. It's terrible. Ugh, drives me nuts. I swear, Sinclair and any of these other, what I would call two cans in a string broadcasters, seem to think the streaming is just stupid and people are going to watch television. Oh, wake up. It's 2016. People are watching on their phones and on computers, and they're not even watching television anymore. Get through. It's the 21st century, people. Ugh.
Grr, rawr.
Yeah, that's what pisses me off more. They're not thinking into the future by having people on podcasts and getting their thing well known. Because it would be wonderful to have these people on and saying, I work at this place and it's great and look at this stuff and wow and wowie. And you get them on Weather Brains and the problem is, this is why Weather Brains is not having this, because why? Span works at Sinclair. Sinclair is a competitor. And Sinclair's in about every market in the country now, so they can't have TV weather people. Luckily, because Gary Lezak is in Kansas City, one of the few markets that Sinclair isn't in, he can be on because he's not a competitor. Now, whether because of the fact that Nate is on Nate works at another TV company is another story. And Kevin Selly, of course, works for Nexstar. And Nexstar and Sinclair are pretty much one and the same, but they're different companies, but they're pretty much one and the same. They don't care. So... And I've had people on, I've had weather guests on from Hearst, Sinclair, Nexstar. I've had every one of them. Even I think, gosh, did I have anybody from Scripps? I don't think so. But anyway, I've had them on from a lot of companies, but it's just recently gotten really bad to the point that they're not thinking ahead. They're kind of think of getting money. Well, maybe you need to start getting streaming services a little better so then you can actually have people watch it, so you can put like ads on it, even or their pop-up ads to say, woo, a new Ford F-150 and whatever. So, but I mean, you can't watch anything if the stream is sucky. You're not going to watch anything. You're just going to give up, and eventually you're going to give up and not watch them anymore. So in turn, James may be losing viewers online because their stream sucks. Whether they're going to fix it, because there hasn't been any weather there lately, because they've been lucky they got a sprinkle. But hopefully they're going to get that fixed, because it's really, really bad. And streaming, especially in severe weather events, if the power goes out, where is the only way you're going to get it? Through your smartphone or your mobile or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's the only way. And if your stream sucks, they're going to turn you off and they'll never come back. Do not destroy the connection between your viewers, whether it's on television or mobile, because if you do, they will not come back in either direction, back to your stream or back to television. And Sinclair is, if they can get their streams working, I don't care if they put commercials in it, as long as it's during severe weather, I'd be bad. But I've noticed their streams during the newscasts are a little better. They were decent, from when I used to watch them a couple months ago, but they were so choppy. I mean, you could look at their YouTube videos that 3340 put up with Span, and they're choppy as all heck, and it makes them look unwatchable. That's why I don't watch the ones from this year, because they're so choppy. They're not good. It makes 3340 look like a second-hand operation, and they're not. They're way beyond that.
I agree wholeheartedly. And
now I've gotten that out of my system.
And I can say with full confidence, I stand corrected.
So,
excuse me.
But, well, it's just because I get on this kick of watching old severe weather coverage, even old stuff. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I watched the severe weather coverage from the Dodge City tornadoes this year back in May, the storm that produced like 7 million tornadoes.
Yeah.
This was from KWCH in Wichita. The station we were watching when we were in Wichita stuck for 6 million years. The station, they're like, oh, there's damage. That was Channel 12. Anyway, their severe weather coverage was really good. It was really decent. Now, at the time, they were media, I believe Media General still. It was a Media General station, but they were because Media General's in the process of being merged with Nexstar. And their coverage was decent. The problem I see is, and their streaming was, from what I could tell from the YouTube video, which I think came from their stream, was really good. There was no kind of mess ups about that, but there's some streams. I know KWTV in Oklahoma City has a few issues with their streams, but I think that's from overloading because so many people are watching. Tulsa has the same problem. So, and I've seen the coverage of the Tulsa tornado from this year back in March from KOTV, which is Travis Meyer's station, Travis, a former guest, and from KTUL, which is the Sinclair station, and both of them are really good. One of the few cases where a Sinclair station, the guy at the Sinclair station screams a lot. And the best thing about the Sinclair one, Channel 8 in Tulsa, is he's like, we're going to go outside. They take a camera, go out into the backyard, onto the deck, and he goes, it points north because they're on a hill south of Tulsa, and he points right at the wall cloud. And it's like you can see the wall cloud, and he's looking right at it so he can see it with his own eyes. Because you can't see Span going outside at River Chase in Hoover to go look for a tornado. Mainly because I've been in that general area, not where the station is, but in that general area, you're not going to see diddly squat in River Chase. Now, during April 27th, 2011, you watch Channel 6's coverage when the tornado was approaching Birmingham. JP Dice, James Paul Dice, went outside and found debris and brought it in and showed it on air. He went outside and did that. I don't think I'd want to do that. Debris falling from the sky, I don't want to be outside for that. But he went out there and did it to show people this is what's going on. So there's some people that, I mean, you can pull it off, but there's some people that can't do it because of the circumstances or whatnot. But some of the best coverage is like Span showing sky cams. And thank God Sinclair did not get rid of them, because I thought the first thing they get rid of would be the sky cams. They'll be like, sky cams, get rid of those things. So, but because what do people want to see? They want to see the tornado. They don't want to be told there's a tornado. They want to see it for themselves, whether it's through a television, which would be the best way, or with their own eyes, which would not be the best way, because if they can see it with their eyes, are they going to take cover or not? And are they going to do the same thing as they see it on television? But there's too many stations that are like, oh, we'll just have one sky cam and that's it. Oh, so your coverage area is only like what can be seen from your sky cam? Screw the other 95% of your coverage area. So I'm ranting so much, my throat's starting to dry up now, but see, this is what happened when I said we were going to rant more. When I said last week we were going to rant more, and we did.
Oh, so yeah, we went on a heck of a series of rants, didn't we?
Yeah, well, we're just going off, I just sent a thing to Matt saying the biggest rant was going to be me about Hurricane Otto, and now it's turned into severe weather coverage and streaming.
Boy, were you wrong.
Well, this is interesting. If you could even go back to the coverage that I did with Henry on the Weather Network. Our coverage was okay, but I mean, we did the best we could do. I mean, we don't have sky cams. We didn't have sky cams. They still don't have sky cams.
We also don't have the funding and support of a $1 billion, TV business behind it either. Don't get me wrong.
Well, yeah.
It's just the wrong way. The Weather Network is kind of a ragtag group of weather enthusiasts.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing to say. That's just saying that your resources were pretty darn limited. But I can say this. For the resources that you have, your severe weather coverage is probably better than even some TV stations. Mostly because you don't have to abide by the rules and regulations or policies of, the big TV weather TV station conglomerates or whatever.
And having to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is toward the end of the time that we were doing coverage was when we got permission to use the DOT cameras. We could get any DOT camera and watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the last coverages we ever did was this past spring, where we actually had in Davenport, we actually had a TV. We had one of the DOT cameras on, and we saw a flash. We saw power flashes, and we were like, "That has to be a tornado." Lo and behold, there was a tornado there, and we saw it by power flashes. We didn't see the funnel; it was dark, but we saw.
I remember that.
It was.
I remember that.
Saw it, and we started getting a little bit creeped out. That was, I think, in April or something or other. I don't remember.
March or April, yeah.
Yeah, because it was the one near LeClaire.
Yep.
And I'm thinking.
That was April.
And I'm thinking, my goodness, that was the first tornado. It wasn't the first tornado we've ever captured live. That would be the Cher tornado from 2 years ago. But.
Right.
Which is the only tornado we've ever captured and had on live, which is another funny story, which I'm not going to get into. Because that brings up the funny thing about YouTube. Because there's a funny thing. I might have to say this now because it's funny. Okay. We had Gottschalk's video because we had a thing with him and with Kelly, his girlfriend, that at the time that we would take their video, his video or hers or whichever's live, but whatever the video they had, they could sell it and do whatever they wanted because it's theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the Cher tornado on, and it was going in and out because the streaming service between a tornado and us is like not, and the internet is like not going to be too good. So here he is. He's like on the corner road. The tornado is 50 feet from him, going right kind of across the road in a diagonal. And we have the video. We see him running outside to go toward the tornado, 50 feet from him. There's an EF1. And I'm thinking, and this is the funny thing. TVN, the old TVN, Reed Timmers group, yep. Donovan Gruner was on the same tornado on the same road. He was about 300 yards further to the west. They called it extremely close. And you can see a car at the corner right next to the tornado. And all the YouTube people are like, I want to see that guy's video. And I'm thinking, yeah, we had that video live. We were the only ones to have it live while doing coverage. We were the only ones. And you watch that video now that Gottschalk did. It's scary because the debris hit his car, which is scary as all heck. And we had that live. Although we lost it not long after that because the connection was not great. But
yeah.
But the tornado later on went into a grove of trees and started just ripping all the trees up. And you could see trees flying into the air. and that was after it had passed him, because all it did was just rip corn up. But that was scary to be that close, and we were live with it. And I like the fact that we kept saying, because Henry was doing most of the coverage, because I was kind of half in and half out, because I didn't get in until later. It was just, it's like people have the tendency to, now I've lost track of where I was going after about this, but for coverage about with stuff that, I mean, you have all these people that are like, I'm at XMYZ DB weather, and look at I'm standing in front of a green screen, and look at me, there's a radar. And I'm thinking, well, we didn't have that, although Henry did. But we had video of a tornado, and that would made us way better than any of those other people. I don't care if you're standing in front of a green screen or not. We have a video of a tornado on the ground. What do you people have? That made us probably the best of everybody, and probably as good as some TV stations, because we actually were showing, because we had double boxes. In fact, we actually had triple boxes. It was Henry, the radar, and the tornado. And we had the scroll. We had our map, because I purposely said we need, like the warning map you see on television. I purposely asked for that, and we got it. And had the scroll, had the map, and the little polygons, and we had the radar, we had the Henry, and we had the tornado on 3 screens and a scroll. Tell me if that person standing in front of a green screen had that. Likely not. We did. That made us look good. That was probably one of the best ones, although I technically think the best one we ever did was the October 2013 one, which was the first severe coverage we ever did, because it was the one where we had so many tornadoes. It was also the first time we ever had Gottschalk call in, because it was dark, so you couldn't get video. But he called in, and we had him on air. So, of course, we lost him because he was in a bad cell area. But
right.
But yeah, our coverages were decent. But and where we're doing it on a shoestring, on almost 2 cans of string, although Henry's setup is and it still is, because he still has it, is really good. But I mean, TV stations with the streaming that we had, we were lucky. But I mean, if we can do it on a shoestring budget, why can't these billion-dollar industries do it, or companies do it? I'm sorry, spend a little money. You can spend money to make more money later on. And I know I went back onto that, but still.
Who knows? Who knows?
Well, I don't know if I want to keep, if we want to continue, because I might go off on 6,000 more rants or something.
I actually need to get going. I have another phone call that I need to attend to.
Uh-oh, he's calling his girlfriend.
Shh.
Oh, he's calling his second girlfriend. So anyway. Calling his third girlfriend. He's calling more girlfriends. He's calling a whole bunch. Anyway, so we'll end it here, because my throat is about ready to die out. And I'm sure Matt's about ready to die out too, so he can get to his phone calls. So we'll see you next week with another show. We'll probably be like 5 minutes next week, because we'll have no more rants. But somehow there'll be something to blab about. Something will happen, and somebody will scream, and something will happen. Hopefully, maybe. No, I hope not. So
something will happen.
Yeah. So for Matthew and myself, we bid you goodbye until next week, and maybe we'll be better by then. Bye.
Bye-bye.